Shalom TV's coverage of the 10th anniversary Limmud conference is made possible in part by a grant from Dr. Naomi Vilko, in honor of her mother, Olga Vilko, and in memory of her father, William Vilko.
So welcome everybody to this session. My name is Gidi Grinstein. The title of the session is Why is Anti-Zionism as integral to Judaism as Zionism? The truth is that the answer is very short. So if I give it up front, you'll be bored for the rest of the hour. So we'll get to that in 15-20 minutes. But what I'll do in the next few minutes is give you a little bit of background for the framework for what basically drives the approach that guides my work. And then through that, I hope we can have, we can dig deeper into this conversation about the relationship in Judaism between Zionist and anti-Zionist voices or forces, and so on. The framework of my thinking is actually captured in this idea of flexigidity, which just recently came out as a book. I started out by asking, what is the secret of Israel's success? And from that, I went to the next question, which is, what is the secret of Zionism's success? Because I thought that, the second answer is essential for the first. And as I dug deeper into Zionism, the legacy of Zionism, I found myself dealing with Jewish content. The answer was that the secret of success, resilience, prosperity, and leadership of Judaism is its adaptability. The secret of adaptability is flexigidity. We'll speak a few words about that. And therefore, you see the other side of the argument. The flexigidity of Judaism is essential for that of Zionism, which is essential for Israel. And today, Israel is big enough and strong enough that the flexigidity of Israel is actually essential for Judaism. So the circle is closed. And that's the basic sequence of my thinking. And basically, when I say flexigidity, it's sort of a project. I hope it will be some point an enterprise of Talmud that engages people in thinking about the big picture of the Jewish people. Okay? So, what was the question that I was asking? You see it in our sources. The eternity of Israel shall not disappear. We're eternal. We're an eternal people. And there's always this engagement with innovation. And you see it here too. Right? Mark Twain and Charles Darwin. Twain is asking, what is the secret of Jewish immortality? Darwin saying, it is not the strongest of species that survives, nor the most intelligent, it's the most adaptable. So the answer to Twain's question comes from Darwin. That's the beginning of the answer. So to me, what is the secret of adaptability? It's this relationship between flexibility and rigidity. Okay? And flexigidity. What is flexigidity? Flexigidity, basically many groups, people, organizations, businesses, non-profits are flexigid in the sense that they have certain elements that are rigid and that they are doggedly committed to, and other elements that are flexible. In the United States of America, obviously the Constitution represents the more rigid framework, and then the legislative capacity, the ability of states and districts and counties to determine their decisions. That's the mechanism of flexibility. And Jewish flexigidity is the unique form of Judaism. The unique form of flexigidity that Judaism has developed. Okay, so what is the challenge? What is the problem? We've never been more powerful. We've rarely been as vulnerable. And we are in a tipping point. And what is the tipping point? Structure. We went from being the most successful and resilient mode of organizing a group to the state of Israel, and the state is yet to be proven concept for us. We're still working on it, as you know. Still a lot of work. Demography, 50% of Jewish boys are born as Israelis. Cohesion, this is Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs saying we are as divided today as we were in the days of in the Second Temple. Society, Israeli society became one of the most non-egalitarian societies among developed nations. So you see a number of critical issues here that are not working and we need to be thinking about. So as I said, the basic idea is the deeper we understand the roots and the place that we're coming from, the better tools we have to move into the future and to try to make a difference. And this is the basic idea of the Jewish flexigid society. We have 6 pillars of flexigidity. I'll explain that. We have a worldwide web of small units, and we have 6 engines that push our adaptability. So let's speak a little bit about these pillars of flexigidity. Basically, what I mean by that is permanent relations between very flexible and very rigid elements in our society. Relationships that are, these tensions are inherent, they're structured, they are never to be resolved, and these are the 6 tensions. Flexigidity of mission. We have 4 powerful, cohesive stories about our mission, ever present. Okay? Flexigidity of membership. The rigid element matrilineal descent, that the child of a Jewish mother is a Jew. The flexible element is conversions. And on top of that, today there's the comeback of the patrilineal descent. Law, Torah, and all these ancient texts, untouchable, sometimes not even in sound, and the Talmudic process. This is, by the way, Talmud with a small t, referring to the process that we go in order to extrapolate new understandings. Flexigidity of structures. Every community has a short list of key institutions. Not two Jewish communities are alike. I'll speak a lot about that tomorrow. Flexigidity of place between Zion and many diasporas. Flexigidity of language between Hebrew and many other languages. So what you see here is that we have a number of key relationships in our people that embody this idea of flexigidity. Now, what are the forces that push our adaptability? And here again, structured tensions between unity and adversity, among multiple centers of leadership, between openness and insularity, inclusiveness and wealth creation. I'm referring to the full legitimacy to accumulate wealth and strong obligation to share wealth. Powerless security, which means we've been powerless, but nonetheless we developed strong mechanisms to preserve our security. And then between idealism and realism. So again, we don't have the time to dive into each and every one of them, of these ideas, but when we go into the question of this session, a lot of them will be played out. And how do we evolve? The evolution of our society is as if by this invisible hand. These forces that keep playing and pushing our progress, and the collective performance is astonishing. First and foremost, pragmatism. We're a bunch of radicals that produce collective pragmatism. It's an astonishing outcome. What I mean by collective pragmatism is we gravitate into places of safety, we gravitate into places of of prosperity, and we gravitate into places where there is religious freedom, freedom of association, and so on. That happened with the Persians, happened in Poland, happened in the Ottoman Empire in the 16th century, and now in the United States of America. So we are ruthlessly pragmatic as a collective. A lot of us are radicals. And that interaction between the radicals produces that collective pragmatic outcome. Second, we are resilience. In spite of our powerlessness, we're prosperous, and we've provided leadership to humanity for many, many years. Really remarkable outcome of our system. So what happened when the State of Israel came into being? I call it the Zionist disruption. So first of all, Israel was defined in the context of serving the Jewish people. It's in our Declaration of Independence. This is a quotation. And on top of that, Prime Minister Netanyahu, in his famous speech in Bar Ilan, said Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people, and even made that a very strong demand that the Palestinians recognize and acknowledge that. Israel is overstretched. How are we overstretched? At the moment, after the disengagement from Gaza, we're controlling 4.3 million people who are not Jews. So 6 million Jews controlling 4.3 million Palestinians. Very problematic demographic balance. And these are the different areas. We don't have the time to go into all of them, where there is a crisis of flexigidity in Zionism. For example, any one of them that we can take, but let's say if you take the issue of mission, if the Jewish people has 4 statements about this mission, Zionism pushed forward one of these stories, which is the story of mission, of nationhood. And Zionism tried to unite all Jews within the framework of nationhood. But by doing that, by being domineering with our national story, we pushed away many other Jews who do not subscribe into this vision. And there are other elements as well. We don't have the time to go through all of them, but you can see there are a number of problems that Zionism brought to the table. And this is the worst thing, in my view. Zionism negated the diaspora, rejected the diaspora, and that created a very dangerous mix of arrogance and ignorance. So we're basically pouring the baby with the bathwater. bathwater. Societal knowledge has been developed over 26 centuries of existence in the diaspora. Israelis are saying it's irrelevant to us and it's not interesting. And this is really not a smart thing to do. Because we have a lot of problems that we are facing, that Judaism has been contending with for a long time, and that societal knowledge is not being brought to bear within Israel proper. So, we're here to discuss Zionist flexigidity, and what is great about Zionism, and this is why I'm really hopeful, is that Zionism is a verb, it's not a noun, it's very dynamic. What you see here is the answer that people give to the question, what is the Zionist thing to do? So it used to be that the Zionist thing to do would be to sit on a stool and milk a cow, but today the machine does it. So today the Zionist thing to do is to sell a $1 billion application Waze and to leave the R&D team in Israel. Okay, so what is the Zionist thing to do? Changes over time. Zionism is a very dynamic national movement. So what I'm saying here are not sort of issues that you need to throw your hands in the air and say there's no solution. We're actually speaking about where we need to move forward. And here again, you have Israelis. This is, as you know, the orange is the symbol of those that protested the disengagement from Gaza. Was the Gaza disengagement a Zionist thing to do? You'll have Israelis that will swear that it was, and you have many Israelis that will swear that it was not. Some people will think getting out of Gaza saved Israel, and some people think it's a disaster. So it's a debate, and it's ongoing. And it's not just a tactical debate, strategic debate. It's a fundamental ideological debate about the identity of the State of Israel. Okay? So here I want to share with you a few of the ideas that I believe we need to be engaged with in order to revitalize the flexigidity of Zionism. Because remember that the flexigidity of Zionism, today, when more than 50% close to 50% of the Jews live in Israel, the flexigidity of Zionism is essential for the flexigidity of Judaism. So these are the top-down things that are in the control of the government. They are addressed through policies, laws, regulation, etc., budgets. So national security. Prime Minister Netanyahu said that we are the nation state of the Jewish people. Let's be the nation state of the Jewish people on many levels, and not just, in terms of often superficial statements. Ending the control over the Palestinian population could really stabilize our political model. Arab Israelis, integration and equality, big question in terms of the future relationship with the Jewish world. Governance, we need a pragmatic system. If the Jewish world produces pragmatism, and I can show that if you're interested later, we need a system, and in Israel we moved into a political system of a state. We need to ensure that that system is actually pragmatic. We're doing quite well about that, but there's still a few corrections. By the way, far better than the American system today. And obviously, for example, the issue of the rabbinate. Centralized religious power, which doesn't exist in the diaspora. We need to decentralize it. So these are the things that could happen top-down, and these are the things that need to happen bottom-up. What I mean bottom-up is by civil society, lay leadership, broadening the mission of the State of Israel, organized society as a network of communities, Israeli Talmud, and so on and so forth. You can read. But basically, that's the movement we need to move into. Back into being a network of communities. And that, in my view, is the vision of Israeli society for the 21st century. We need to reorganize ourselves, actually go back to the roots and organize ourselves as a network of communities. And then we have a lot of stuff working for us. First and foremost, we have the societal DNA of the Jewish people, still available to us in Israel, that we can tap into. But it's not just that. We have the flexigidity of mission of the Jewish people relevant to us. We have the legacy of lifelong learning, and so on. So, with that, let me just skip the whole issue of leadership and focus now on this program. So, basically everything that I said right now is some sort of a framework to allow us to have this discussion from a specific perspective. So, why is anti-Zionism is integral to Judaism and Zionism? First of all, I want to say, who are the Jews that are anti-Zionists? Do we all agree that these statements apply? Some of them are very progressive, some of them are very conservative, correct? So across the spectrum. It was in the past and it's in the present, right? And probably in the future. They bring multiple rationalities to their arguments. Okay? Some of them are fundamentalists and some of them are situationalists. What I mean by fundamentalists is they reject the very idea of Zionism and the State of Israel now in our time, for religious reasons or other reasons. Some of them are situationalists. These are the people that bring you the argument that says, you know what, the State of Israel is not what we hoped for. It doesn't deliver on our aspiration of being a model society. So you hear these arguments as well. And the point being is they're all Jews. So just by this fact, we see that anti-Zionism is integral to Judaism. And a lot of times when you speak to Israelis and to Zionists, they are sort of astonished that that could be the case. But in essence, you know, it's so prominent and it's so out there in front of our eyes. And as I said, why is anti-Zionism is integral to Judaism and Zionism? It is. Simple answer. But I want to actually now begin to dig deeper into the different ideas that underlie this anti-Zionism. First of all, I want to speak about flexibility of mission. And here, let me sort of slow down and dig deeper into this idea. Judaism has 4 founding stories. First is nationhood, that we are a group of people that came from a specific place on the face of this earth, which is Zion. It was basically in our legacy, it was bought with money, parts of it was promised. We kept uninterrupted loyalty to this place, presence in Zion. Given the opportunity, we were exiled from it. Given the opportunity, we came back. It's a very strong story. It has its heroes, right? Maccabees, 23 centuries ago. David Ben-Gurion, 60 years ago. And all these other modern names. Story number 2, we're a people. Peoplehood. We are a tribe. We relate to each other like a family. Okay? This is a story about shared legacy, history, destiny. So this is a story that leads the great Jewish community of New York to send money to Argentina when the Jewish community of Argentina collapses. That's peoplehood. Some of you were part of the Let My People Go movement, right? Sharansky, peoplehood. Bringing Ethiopian Jews, peoplehood. Okay? When 5 Jews walk down Bondi Beach in Sydney, and they walk into a bar, they overdrink, they get beat up, it's a non-issue. 5 Jews walking down Bondi Beach a few months ago and being beat up because they're Jews. They walked down, they were Shabbat, they were dressed like Jews, they were attacked violently, in Sydney a few months ago. My point is that these are the symptoms of peoplehood. Okay? Third story, we are a religious congregation, we're an Edah. We have a special relationship collectively and individually with God. And the fourth story is that we have a mission to humanity, to serve humanity. Now what is interesting is that all of these stories emanate from the same person, from Abraham. He bought the land with his money and was promised the land. He is the father of our people, he and Sarah, the parents of our people. He was endowed with a mission to serve the families of the earth. And he is obviously a person who was willing to commit the ultimate sacrifice of his son. So he embodies everything. And because he embodies all of these stories are ever present. Now, how is it related to Zionism and anti-Zionism? Because these 4 stories create a menu of options for association with the Jewish people. So some of us are nationhood Jews. Others are peoplehood Jews, Tikkun Olam Jews, religious Jews. Many of us in modernity combine these elements. But it is perfectly legitimate to embrace just one and not the others. Okay? And what is interesting about this system is that this is a system that gives us prisms to analyze whether something that is happening is good for the Jews or not. So when something happens, There is the nationhood answer if it's good for the Jews, which means is it good for Israel? Right? There's the peoplehood answer. Is it good for the Jewish communities all over the world? Is it good for our mission? Is it good for our religion? And so on. So we have many of options to relate to different phenomena. And of course, this menu of options will be applied to Israel. And that's why you have multiple arguments why Israel is good or bad for the Jews. We used to take it for granted, but it's not that trivial. And by the way, this is why Israel's performance over time will actually affect the way Jews see it. Okay? Second, World Wide Web of communities. We've been organized as a World Wide Web of communities. That has been critical to our security and resilience. As I showed, Zionism wants to dismantle the network. It's a very strong argument. And you could really understand people that will say, we don't want the Jewish people to place all the eggs in the basket of the State of Israel. Third is what I call resilience and inoculation to big ideas. And here, we have a system, the Jewish system develops through deliberation, through debates, through asking questions. And then there is another idea in Judaism, which is the idea of doubt, safek. And the difference between a question and doubt is that in a question, you are asking something within accepting the framework of the system. When you get to the level of doubt, you challenge the system. Right? And sometimes it's a slippery slope from questioning to doubt. And that's why, by the way, Judaism repeatedly produced Jews that were its worst enemies. Because there are people that engaged with the system and then rejected it. So there is this historical anecdote that the commander of the Roman legion that destroyed Jerusalem was a Jew from Alexandria. Right? Some of the most the toughest prosecutors and persecutors of Judaism during the days of the Spanish Inquisition were former Jews. And some of the leaders of the BDS movement are Jews. And 2/3 of the Politburo in the Soviet Union were Jews. So over and over again, you see that our system and society produces people that step out and attack the society. And it's almost an inevitable outcome of a society that encourages all of us to ask serious questions. So it was sort of ridiculous on the part of Zionism to expect that would not be applied to Zionism. But the outcome is that Judaism is relatively inoculated to big ideologies that could sweep it off its feet. There are very powerful mechanisms that challenge leaders, especially charismatic leaders, to actually prove that their approach is worthwhile. Even Maimonides, during his time, his leadership was questioned. So here too, the anti-Zionist forces are integral to the dynamics of Judaism. Okay? And then, last is Elu ve'elu. And again here, some of us that are here to serve the idea of Zionism often fail to respect the fact that those that are against Zionism are also serving a big cause, a Jewish cause. And it's sometimes their argumentation against the idea of Israel is as powerful as ours. And the reason I'm saying that is that this is, in my view, it's a very important observation in terms of mutual respect in our community. Because if they are here to serve and we are here to serve, we may be in deep disagreement about the direction, but at the end of the day, we're all anchored in the service of the same bigger vision.
According to my knowledge, and maybe you can correct me, it seems to be a very small minority. Why is it so integral?
So first of all, it's integral. The fact that you're small or big, minority or majority, doesn't mean that you're not part of the community. And the point is, obviously, they're part of the community, they're Jews. I'm trying to go deeper here and to actually say that they are integral to our people, and they provide a very important force, counterbalance to what we're trying to do in Israel. So some people think that the only interesting debate that is happening with regard to Zionism is within Zionism, between the left and the right, the hawks and the doves and so on. My argument is, in Judaism, an equally important process that is happening is those that reject Zionism and challenge it from the outside. And if we now take the big picture, 30,000 feet of the Jewish people, they are a very important voice for our people. Because they are a counterforce to the ability of Zionism to become domineering and dominant. And that's really dangerous in a world that is very dynamic and ever-changing. Please.
So I understand why they're integral to the Jewish people, but I'm having trouble understanding what's integral about them to Zionism. And specifically, I'm thinking about, I don't know if you've been following the situation with Hillel. There's a movement that started at one college campus to have what's called Open Hillel, which is kind of expanding the voices that speak about Zionism to include people who would identify as anti-Zionists and a number of other people. And Hillel International's response is anti-Zionists are not welcome in Hillel space or under the Hillel brand as speakers about Zionism. My real question is, Hillel International has said those voices are not welcome in our buildings, and you're saying they're integral to Zionism. So what would you say to Hillel?
I want to make three distinctions here between being integral to Judaism and integral to Zionism, number one. Number two, between people who are anti-Zionist and the BDS movement. Okay? Two different things. Three different things. So first of all, let me begin by Hillel. Hillel is an organization that used to be a religious organization and is still registered as a religious association on campus, but Hillel has shifted its ideology over the last, I think, probably 2 decades, and Hillel today is an organization anchored in the idea of peoplehood. And in the idea of peoplehood, where we're all family, I don't think that Hillel can credibly say that any Jew, no matter which ideology, is not welcomed in Hillel. Anybody, because if you're anchored in the idea of peoplehood, then what you think and what I think is immaterial, because we're part of the same people. So you could be a communist and I could be a capitalist. You could be in Israel and I could be in the diaspora. You could be an Orthodox and I could be a so-called secular or whatever. Hillel, in terms of its basic ideology of peoplehood, needs to welcome everybody, including those that are anti-Israel. The other question is, can Hillel be a platform for a group that is fundamentally anti-Semitic and anti-Semitic in its approach? And that's the BDS movement. And here I think that Hillel can never allow a group that is BDS in its doors, because if you're the people, you cannot allow someone that comes in and is basically against the people. That's an enemy of the people. There is a difference between being an enemy of the people and not liking the state of Israel. And that's where I draw the line. And sometimes it's a clear line and sometimes it's a fine line. And it's not so easy to determine, because a lot of the people that are on the side of the BDS movement are tacit delegitimizers. They won't really flag out that they are basically anti-Semites. But how do you know that they're anti-Semites? Singling out Israel, demonizing Israel, delegitimizing Israel, right? Look at what's going on in Syria. They're only interested in Israel. Okay, a lot of the BDS movement is anti-Semitic and fundamentally, therefore, rejects the right of the Jewish people to self-determination. The Jewish people is the only people whose right of self-determination is rejected, and that's where I think the Hillel leadership was right to draw the line. But at the end of the day, to the best of my knowledge, it's not that they really drew the line. I think they issued some guidelines a few years back, and what they expected is that these they issued guidelines for different Hillels around the country to basically discuss these things and to engage in this conversation. So I'm not really sure what went on internally in Hillel, but in terms of from this perspective, analyzing the situation, I think that it's clear that anti-Israel voices should be as welcome in Hillel as any other group. but anti-Jewish forces are not. And the BDS movement is anti-Jewish, in my view. Please.
How would you distinguish, how would you have a litmus test or a line that's crossed that changes from anti-Zionism to anti-Jewish?
Okay, so first of all, actually the BDS movement is a great case in point. Simple questions. If they are for the two-state solution, then probably you have less reason to be concerned. The BDS movement is against the two-state solution. And what is the principle of the two-state solution? Two states for two people, nation state, Jews and Arabs. So if you're dealing with a group that is fundamentally against the idea of the two-state solution, they're basically only against the nation state of the Jewish people. We know that. Okay, so that's one indication. Can they fathom the idea of the nation state of the Jewish people? A lot of them cannot. So this is where you can draw the line. And as I said earlier, it's not always explicit. Sometimes it's tacit. Sometimes you need to read between the words and between the lines. Sometimes you need to dig back into statements of some of these leaders to really see where they stand. But and that's why it requires some work. But if Hillel would have defined itself as a pro-Israel organization, I would understand not welcoming in the door people who are anti-Israel. But if Hillel defines itself as a peoplehood organization, as they do, then any Jew should be welcome. And by the way, Hillel made a statement that they're not even checking, and I support that, I think it's right, in terms of matrilineal, patrilineal descent, any person that says that he or she are Jewish and want to be associated with the Jewish people is welcome in Hillel today. And I heard an amazing statistics that 50% of the people walking through the gates of Hillel today are halachically not Jewish. So these are people reporting and saying, I want to be a part of the Jewish people. Where some people that believe in certain way in halakha would not accept them as Jews. So that's the power of the idea of peoplehood, the mission of peoplehood. And the mission of people basically says, whether you support the idea of being light unto the nations and tikkun olam or not, you're welcome. Support Israel or not, you're welcome. You're religious or not, you're welcome. But you cannot be against the people. That's the essence of peoplehood. And that's what's being played out, I think, in all these campuses. Please.
What is your opinion on binationalism, and if that is considered anti-Zionism?
It's actually a great question, because you could be a person that is committed Jewishly, Israeli, that believes in a vision of Jews and Israelis, Jews and Palestinians, Jews and Arabs, and Jews, Muslims, Christians living together in one political entity where Jews are not necessarily the majority. I think it's a bad idea, but that's a legitimate view. Okay? And that would not constitute, in my view, stepping out of the line, out of the tent. But at the same time, you have people that argue that just in order to destroy the idea of the nation state of the Jewish people. So again, that goes back to this gentleman's question. Sometimes the truth is between the lines. And that's what we need to look for.
I'm very much in sympathy with what you're trying to do. I mean, the idea of expanding it, the slogan of anti-Zionism as critical, as whatever, indispensable part of Judaism. It's a great slogan. I think it's really an important statement. I think it's an important statement. You're making it here at Limmud. But this last line is the old style thinking. The charge of anti-Semitism based on certain political litmus tests is really the old style thinking. It's not the slogan that you're giving. It's the opposite of your slogan. So if you just take some of the factors that you yourself have stated, if you are against the two-state solution, well, most of the Israeli right wing is against two-state solution. Members of the government, most of the members of the government of Israel are against two-state solution. Are they anti-Semitic because they're against the two-state solution? It's most of the Israeli government. Okay, that's first of all. People who demonize the state of Israel? Well, there's a book that not figuratively and not metaphorically, but literally views the state of Israel as the embodiment of the devil. And that book is written by the Satmar Rebbe, by Rabbi Olish, right? The biggest Hasidus is the Satmar Hasidus. You're not going to let Satmar Hasidim into Hillel because they literally demonize the state of Israel. So we're kicking out the Israeli government. They're against two-state solution. We're kicking out the Satmar Hasidim because they literally demonize the state of Israel. And as far as BDS, I'm sure there are anti-Semites who are working for BDS. But to say that BDS in general that is the old style thinking that you're against. So let's take Judith Butler. You can like her, you can hate her. She's not an anti-Semite. She's a very well-known philosopher. She's very attached to her Jewish identity. As far as I hear, her kid had a bar mitzvah. She is very anti-Zionist, very much in favor of BDS. I oppose her positions, but to call her an anti-Semite is the old style thinking. It's against your own slogan. So once you kick out the Satmar, the Israeli government, famous, well-known, and very highly respected philosophers like Judith Butler, that is against your own position. And that's the only thing I want to say. I want to urge you to stick to your own principles.
Okay,
and not to start flinging around charges of anti-Semitism when they're not warranted. Unless you want to call the Satmar Rebbe and Bennett and Ayelet Shaked, if they're anti-Semites, well, then you're not left with too many people.
So let me repeat my answer, because I think I may have not been clear. My argument was that first of all, I do stand by my argument, and I think we can prove it, that the BDS movement is an anti-Semitic movement. Singling out Israel, demonizing Israel. You have
Also the Satmar Rebbe.
No, the Satmar Rebbe is different. The Satmar Rebbe is making Jewish arguments about the validity of the Zionist project. It's totally different. The two cannot be mixed, oil and water.
If you read Judith Butler's book, she also makes Jewish arguments against Zionism.
Okay, I'm not talking about that at the moment. The BDS movement that claims to embrace values of human rights and international law is an anti-Semitic movement. They fail to acknowledge what's going on in Syria and focus on that. They have no issue in what's going on in Sinai or in Egypt. They are not interested in what's going on in Congo, where in a single day, more people died than in 5 years of conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. Anybody that flags the flag of human rights and ends up focusing on the condition of the Palestinians in the West Bank exclusively, I have a big question mark on their motivation. Really big. You know what? I would like some of them to focus on two issues and not just one.
You're talking just like all the old style Zionists.
Maybe it's old style. Maybe it's old style. But what I can show you on paper, based on research, is their statements. Now, a lot of the people that work for the BDS movements are useful idiots. They don't know who's behind the movement. They don't know the ideology of Ali Abu Naimeh and Barghouti and all these guys. And these guys are geniuses, because what they did is to blur the lines between the attempt to eliminate Israel and its policies. And where do you see the ridiculous nature of their positions? Take, for example, the Sheba farms. Israel withdrew from Lebanon to the last centimeter, okay, after 2000. And what did they do? And there is this section in the corner of the border area of Lebanon, Syria, and Israel, called the Sheba Farms. According to Lebanese maps, this is Syria. What did the BDS movement say? Israel and Jordan, Israel and Lebanon still have outstanding territorial issues in the Sheba Farms. When according to Lebanese maps, this is Syria. So this is the BDS movement, always converging around the outstanding issue, never giving Israel the benefit of doubt, never applying any sort of equal standards on other things. And I don't want to make this a session about the BDS movement, but I urge you, give me your email, I'll send you some material. And a lot of it is, we need to face the hard truth about them. Not every, what may seem to be criticism of Israeli policies is about the policy. Sometimes it's just a pretext for something much deeper. And it's a serious conversation. And some of you may agree or disagree. I believe that. And this is why I believe that Hillel, which was his question, was right to draw the line on the BDS movement.
And Satmar, also a
Satmar is a Jew having a very serious...
Demonizing, literally demonizing, the tools of the devil.
That's okay.
Yes, literally.
It's perfectly... Yeah. I'll tell you why. Yeah. I'll tell you why I think it's okay. As painful as it is as a Zionist to hear, okay? Because I cannot question the fact that he is here to serve the Jewish people. Anybody questions that? Nobody questions, at least not in this room. I may have very deep disagreement with this person. Deep, fundamental, unbridgeable. But we're here to serve the Jewish people. So now, my debate with you or her or him, in this given point in time, is informed by whatever knowledge we have of the past and whatever understanding we have of the present circumstances. But the beauty of our society is that it enshrines these debates if they're for the sake of heaven. Because in the present condition, I may be right. But in a different condition, he may be right. Over time, or change of circumstances, and so on. So the moment he is in a place where he seeks to serve the people, even if he has diametrically opposed position from me, from the perspective of flexigidity, we're part of the ecosystem. And we're playing together to serve the bigger cause. And the progression of the Jewish people comes from the interplay between me and him, between a progressive and an orthodox person, between a socialist Jew and a capitalist Jew. I hope everybody understands why there is a dramatically difference, in my view, between any criticism about Zionism that comes from a Jew in the service of the Jewish people, okay, that wants to serve the better cause, and a group of people that comes from the outside and basically wants to erode us or eliminate us. At least in Israel, they want to eliminate us. So that's a major, I know that sometimes it's a fine line and it takes some contemplation and we may not also agree on the conclusion. But what I'm trying to share right now is the process that at least I try to go through in distinguishing between those two elements. So yes, Naftali Bennett, I may agree or disagree with him. He's here to serve the people. It's obvious. Even if, and I know that being a politician may cloud a little bit his motivations and so on. But at the end of the day, he's here to serve. And that to me is the line that I draw with the BDS movement. And the BDS movement is a very tricky, very elusive group of people, very sophisticated. I can send you the materials, you will see these guys are onto something really sophisticated in what they're doing. Please.
How to reconcile the differences in Zionism and anti-Zionism when a definition is not even agreed upon in the tent of Jews? When some people say that the Israeli presence in the West Bank is not good for Israel economically, diplomatically, morally, and some people say that a presence in this land that is ours is the most Zionist thing you can do.
Well, I think it's great that the definition is not agreed. First of all, I view Zionism as a permanently evolving, dynamic national movement. Captured here in the slide, Zionism is a verb, it's not a noun. So what is the Zionist thing to do is a subject of debate and evolves. And I gave this example. It used to be, as I said, to sit on a stool and milk a cow was the Zionist thing to do. And very highly educated Eastern European Jews left their home, and that's what they did. Sat on a stool in a kibbutz. So I think that debate is legitimate and healthy. And if I take a step back and to the very original set of ideas that I try to present here is that I think that the secret of success of Zionism is the flexigidity of Zionism. National movements or political movements that were not adequately flexible of the 20th century are not here. Look at the Soviets. And I could give you many other, I'm not talking about those that were crushed by fire. I'm just talking about big ideas that failed to evolve and were eventually eliminated. And we're still here. We started under the Ottoman, continued under the British, thrived in the bipolar world. The Soviets collapsed. America is the world's only superpower. And now we're in a new world. And we need to continue to serve the prosperity and security of the State of Israel. We could not have done that if our national movement was rigid. So but also we can't be all over the place. So the flexigidity of Zionism, flexigidity of Zionism is essential for the flexigidity of Israel. But because Israel becomes such a big force in the Jewish world, the flexigidity of Israel then goes back to the flexigidity of Judaism, and that's a cycle. And part of what I'm trying to say in Hebrew in Israel, and here in English is that in this respect, we in Israel, we are yet to appreciate the very important role that we're beginning to play in the Jewish people. Again, 1948, we were 5% of world Jews post-Holocaust were in Israel. Just 5%. So when you're only 5%, you can do whatever you want. You're not affecting the system. But when you're crossing 50%, 60%, that's systemic impact. And this requires, at least on the part of a certain group in Israel, to begin to think differently about the role in the Jewish people. Because we are messing with the societal DNA of the Jewish people now. I'm sorry, we're able to mess with the societal DNA of the Jewish people, and that's a very serious thing. Please, sir.
Thank you. This has been a fascinating analysis. But just to challenge you a little bit, it seems to me that you're drawing distinction on the one hand between modern political Zionism, which, over the last century, as opposed to Zionism, the concept, which is integral to sort of Jewish existence over a period of a couple of thousand years.
Since Abraham.
Yeah. And in that sense, you make a compelling argument about the importance of the diversity of the Jewish community as being a strengthening agent, both for Zionism and for Judaism in general. The notion that you have people who focus on peoplehood, who focus on other things. But to say that there are different segments of the community that are important and that focus on different priorities is different than to define them as anti-Zionist. And you seem to be conflating and sort of taking a bit of a leap with respect by saying, on the one hand, we're strengthened by having diversity, and then immediately saying there are all these different people who focus on different aspects of their Jewish connections, and therefore anti-Zionism is essential and integral to the strength of Israel and the Jewish people. To the Jewish people. I understand that. But most of those things that you're talking about, those are not people who are anti-Zionist. Those are people who are either quietly Zionist, perhaps non-Zionist and focusing on other things, but they're not anti-Zionist. And to suggest that anti-Zionism is an important element to the strength of the Jewish people overall seems to be a very significant leap that your argument you may need to make a little bit more strongly. The second is just that it seems to me that maybe it's partly because people like you are making the argument that there already is a bit of a shift. So whether it's anybody from Bushi Herzog to Naftali Bennett, you hear people in the Israeli context saying, we've now realized that we need to learn from and appreciate the diaspora Jewish communities in ways that we haven't previously, and we need to change the nature and the dynamic of the relationship.
Right, so these are basically two separate points. Yes, you're right. I'm making the point right now in very broad brushstrokes. I don't want to do a shameless plug, but it's great. There's greater detail in the book. But I do think that this is a very important distinction, because I think that one of the major stumbling blocks of Zionism today, moving into the next level, updating its approach, becoming relevant in the 21st century to the Jewish people and to the world. So one of the biggest impediments that we have is this dangerous combination of arrogance and ignorance that we have developed toward the diaspora. Because think about the issue of inclusive growth. Okay? This is an issue that Jews have been dealing with for 26 centuries. And the Jewish people has developed the most sophisticated and efficient and effective society to deal with inclusive growth. Right? And we've done it in an amazing way over many centuries. So now there is the State of Israel dealing with that issue. And in 1985, instead of digging deeper into Jewish roots, it's imported this DNA from the United States of America that is not Jewish. Capitalism, privatization, and so on. 25 years later, we have a near broken society in terms of social cohesion. We are one of the 3 most non-egalitarian countries among developed nations. How did we get to that? So my argument is, the bigger picture, now that we're going to shape the next phase of the State of Israel, we're 65 looking, the team that I work with, the Reut Institute, we're now looking a decade ahead, okay, to the year 75. When we're looking ahead, where do we dig for inspiration? And that perception of Zionism, that it was a departure from the diaspora. Diaspora is no longer relevant. Those Jews in the diaspora that reject Zionism, don't embrace us, don't really get it. I think that's fundamentally a block on our way, blocking our way, an impediment on the ability of Israeli society to go to the next level of prosperity and security and resilience. So there's a bigger, I would say, motivation here for me. Because at the end of the day, I'm not saying you embrace, look, I want to again try to make this distinction and hope maybe I wasn't clear. As a Jew, I belong to the faction of Zionists. Yes, there may be a debate between me and Bougie Herzog, or me, not Gidi, right? Or Naftali Bennett, but I'm a Zionist. The first thing I need to do in order to be really respectful of the Jewish people, of what's going on outside of Israel, is to respect that there are factions that are non-Zionist and anti-Zionist, and they are all legitimately Jewish. If I can't make that step, I have a problem moving to the next level. And moving to the next level is saying all of this ecosystem that has Zionists, people who are Zionists, people who are a-Zionists, they don't care, people that are against, all of that system has been remarkably successful and resilient. And we in Israel, when we want to shape the future of our society, we better take a very good look at what's been going on here, because there's so much we can learn. Okay? So it's like an essential step to move forward, to appreciate that in the Jewish people, bigger picture, anti-Zionist voices and Zionist voices are equally legitimate and integral. The name of the session is, why is anti-Zionism as integral to Judaism as Zionism? To Judaism. To Judaism. That's the name of the session. Okay? And it's a very important distinction.
I'm not Israeli. I don't live in Israel. I'm beginning to have a problem with the term Zionism, which was a movement for the establishment of a state. State was established, Baruch Hashem, 65 years ago. Maybe it's time for a new name for what goes on in Israel, to create a society that moves forward instead of... Every time I hear the debate about Zionism this, Zionism that, it's backward looking. It also buys into the whole debate as to whether the state deserves to continue to exist today. We exist. State exists. So maybe it's time to not even have the conversation about Zionist, anti-Zionist.
So unfortunately, this is a really big question, and I'll need to be very brief, and then there is no time for conversation. But it's actually a phenomenal question. You're touching at the heart. You're hitting the nail on the head. What is the idea of Zionism? Some people say, like you, that the purpose of Zionism was to establish a Jewish state. I don't subscribe to this view. In my view, the purpose of Zionism is to realize the right of the Jewish people to self-determination. Realizing the right of the Jewish people to self-determination is something that takes different shape and different form in different contexts and different time. Okay, so for me, Zionism wasn't a national movement designed to, pin a flag at the top of the mountain, get to the moment when Ben-Gurion reads the Declaration of Independence, dismantle the institutions. No, a day after, the challenge of Zionism is in gathering the diasporas, immigration absorption. Today, a Zionist thing to do, I believe that we will be tested right after we work out our issue with the Palestinians in the West Bank. I believe Israel will be tested, by the way, by the BDS movement. Believe me, they're relentless. The day after there's a Palestinian state, they'll find another cause. We will be tested on the issue of the integration and equality of Israeli Arabs. So just flow with me, with my argument for a moment. If you believe that this is the next frontier, then a Zionist thing to do today is to focus on that problem. And not to frame it as doing favor to non-Jews, to Arabs, but understanding that this is the next frontier of Zionism and already being there with philanthropic energy, with non-profit energy, and so on. Okay? Zionist thing to do is the conscription of ultra-Orthodox people into the military. This is the problem of today. Fixing the government, fixing local governments. What is the Zionist thing to do is a permanently evolving question with permanently evolving answers. So, with all due respect, I disagree. Okay?
I was wondering whether you could comment on whether you draw a distinction between, I guess, informal boycotting or BDS that's directed at the settlements in particular, especially in reference to the two-state solution.
Theoretically, boycotting the settlements may be an act of legitimizing Israel. This is theory. Everybody understands why? So, because if I'm saying I'm boycotting this, but this is kosher, you're basically legitimizing the idea of the nation state of the Jewish people, of the right of the Jews to self-determination. You're just saying, hey guys, you've overstepped the line, we don't accept that, we don't like it, you correct this, you're good. So when that is the message, and it's a little bit of a paradox, boycotting the settlements is act of legitimization. But, and this is a big but, a lot of people that go for the settlements, they're not about the settlements. And we would be wrong to assume that if we solve the issue of the settlements, they will retire. And believe me, based on, as you said, Omar Barghouti and these others, they're not going to say, oh my God, there's a much bigger problem 200 kilometers to the northeast called Syria. No. They're going in. They're coming after us again. So that's why it's a very touchy issue, this whole issue of the settlements. Generally speaking, in many of the cases that have been in the media recently, I believe that boycotting of the settlement is actually an act of legitimization. Okay, please go.
Does being the nation state of the Jewish people mean that diaspora Jews should have representation in Israeli governmental institutions?
Now, in terms of representation in Israel, in general, I believe that there should be multiple ways of diaspora Jews to get involved in Israel. I do not subscribe to the view of send us your checks, give us your political support, right or wrong, we'll do whatever we want with our sovereign government. We are the nation state of the Jewish people, obviously of non-Jewish Israelis as well. So outside Jews, diaspora Jews have a stake in Israel. How is it being played out? I can't give you a simple answer. There is one position in Israel that I hope it's tacit, that would reflect that unity, and that's the president of the state of Israel. So it's Shimon Peres, I think, did it very well. Now we're in the process of electing another president, and I really hope that the next president is elected is not some party politician that is able to work the corridors of power, but is an inspiring person that can be a force of unity for the Jewish people. And of course for all Israelis. And of course for all Israelis, because we've been speaking about Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people. It's important to acknowledge there are also 20% of the Israelis who are not Jews. So this is a very complicated societal ecosystem, and I hope that the next person that is the president rises up to this ability to bridge. But how exactly it's being played out, I can't give you a simple answer. And with that, we have to close.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM. To GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive on DVD with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.